maybe you could tell us, how a female is now like this queen of testosterone or male health, kind of give us the past of, your story.
Yeah, I think so Queen of Men's Health, I forget who named me that. I want to say it was like the guys from Barbell Shrugged. I can't remember. But basically the short version of it is I majored in exercise science, and just like everyone who was in that major, we all want to do strength and conditioning with athletes. Back then, and I say back then because I graduated college in 03, there was not a lot of money in that, and it wasn't necessarily a lot of women and stuff like that. So I grew up in a town that was extremely wealthy, Greenwich, Connecticut. But I grew up normal, I'll say, single parent household and all that. I always have to preface that. So that town had a lot of guys that played golf, and I ended up training a lot of golfers. And I was like, maybe I should learn about this sport, because it was like the one sport I didn't really know a lot about. I played soccer in college. So I was like, let me look this up. And they had a certification for golf fitness through the Titleist Performance Institute. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So I went all in on that. We have 9 golf clubs in Greenwich. I live in Florida now, but we had. And so my entire clientele were male golfers because they're type A. They want to work. They're just like athletes. And I was like, well, this is a gold mine, because they could afford to train. They want to train. They want to do anything they can to be able to hit the ball farther than their friends and be able to score a lot lower. So basically, handling all guys, you realize very quickly all the questions that come up surrounding nutrition and hormones and stuff. And like, guys don't go to the doctor unless their dick doesn't work, or, something that's an emergency. And then they're asking me about like, well, I found this test booster and I take DHEA, and I'm like, why? And they have no rhyme or reason. So I was like, well, I'm going to learn about hormones. We learned physiology, but we didn't really go deep in like the biochemistry of hormones and stuff. I don't think really any XI majors do. And I want to learn it about myself as a woman. And so I just started posting about like female and male hormones randomly. So it was like right after MySpace. So like when Facebook started to become popular. And one of my business coaches at the time, he's like, you have an angle with the men stuff. You seem more excited about that. Just run with that. Stop posting about women. I was like, okay. So did that. And, I'm very much like a tomboy at nature. I love cars. I love training. I'm a meathead. So I just related to guys a lot easier than the women in my town. And it was just a natural progression. And so then I learned everything I could about male hormones and sought out doctors to just learn from. And I was actually telling Rick Collins last night, the first doctor I emailed and wanted to learn from was Dr. Carlin Coker, who used to write for Muscular Development. He was in Greenwich. And I was like, hi, can I just like learn from you and go through your process? And, he wrote a book on hormones, and he trained at the same gym as me. And I don't know, that was 2008. And so here we are now, 2023. I've spoken at medical conferences. I've created a massive network of doctors. I know you guys. I know like tons of people that I built relationships with in the men's health world. And I absolutely love it, because somebody has to advocate for men's health. As you guys both know, when you see women who talk about hormone replacement, it's like normal. But guys who talk about testosterone, it's like, oh, it's bad. Steroids.
Yeah.
You're doing something illegal, stuff like that. So I know that wasn't as short as I said, but that's literally the shortest that I can make it.
No, that's perfect. And do you work with men of all ages, or do you have when I think golf and golf clubs, I think probably older, more wealthy individuals. So I'm guessing probably above 30, probably 40 and above. Is that kind of your target demographic, or do you work with all guys?
So I work with all guys now. I'm 100% online. I trained people in person for about 19 years, and then was half and half in 2016. And then 2020 was just very easy to go 100% online. But the golf world brought me guys in their 30s and up. So younger than probably you would think, because Wall Street was literally where everyone worked. So Greenwich was the first town outside New York City. So the 5 a.m. guys would catch the train right after training. So I only work with a few golfers now. I'm still kind of in the golf fitness world, but now remotely I work with all sorts of men from all different countries, both fitness and nutrition. And then obviously I facilitate the hormone optimization piece as well, and kind of help manage that relationship and help them navigate any of the scary conversations or the awkward conversations. Cause now they don't have to go to a doctor. Like no one wants to, they can do it online. So.
And what kind of things were you finding in men that led you down the path of wanting to look into hormones? Like, were there frequent complaints you were hearing or symptoms? You know, what kind of stuff made you think there must be something hormonally going on here?
You want to think like naturally when you start to decline in energy and maybe like motivation and drive, you're like, all right, something's off. So usually grabbing a stimulant or grabbing like some sort of supplement is the logical progression. Like, oh, this should help me with my mood. This should help me with my energy. None of those things did. And I just have no shame. So I would just directly ask like, hey, like, you know, do you have any sexual performance issues? And they did. And they didn't talk to anybody about it because they're not going to do that socially. Guys don't talk about this stuff. They're not really going to bring it up to their wife or their girlfriend or their boys. So I was like, okay, there's a relationship here. And I didn't quite understand that back then, but now I can speak on it a lot easier. And so it would be the initial like, hey, get labs done and see where you are. Because 2008 and 9, it wasn't like normal to go get testosterone checked when you had these type of symptoms. It was more, do I have erectile dysfunction or am I impotent type of thoughts. And so those were the conversations that we would talk about in addition to like test boosters. So to research like, okay, do these actually work? Okay, whatever. So have those discussions and all that. And then a lot of nutrition, like we as women totally get cornered as the ones that undereat and overtrain. Almost all my guys do. Yeah. Like literally I can count on one hand maybe that someone who came to our coaching program and I had to take calories away. Almost always it's just increasing calories because they do what they think is logical. Like I want to get lean and shreddy. I'm going to decrease calories. I'm going to increase exercise. And then they're like, I'm small and skinny fat.
Right. So yeah. We talk a lot about the lifestyle factors. I think both either energy devoid, needing more calories, or even surplus, because we get both, especially younger guys. You know, there will be a lot of people who just haven't dialed in the basics yet and jump straight to testosterone now. Back then it wasn't. Now that's, you know, it's gone from not talking about it at all to that's the issue. And just out the gates, everybody assumes testosterone 100% before checking off all the other boxes. Have you found that with your clients too?
Oh my God, more than ever. And like also I forgot to mention sleep was a big thing. Like these guys would step off a red eye and think that they're a hero for coming straight to the gym. And I had guys that would text me from the locker room because they were late because they fell asleep putting their sneakers on. And I'm like, bro, go home. Like, I'm not charging you. Just go home. Like stuff like that. They think they're doing the right thing. And so obviously burning the candle at both ends was hurting them. They didn't realize it. Balance and work and all of that, that wasn't understood. But now it's like, I compare it to, I said the other day to somebody, I was like, people used to ask, what was your training program and what diet did you use to look this way? And now it's like, what's your stack? Or what's your PRT protocol? You know, they think it's this panacea that they can sit on the couch, inject testosterone or inject whatever anabolics, and then overnight they'll turn into the Hulk. And I'm like, cool, that would be great, but it doesn't work that way. And so they think that's like the only thing holding them back from progress in the gym and looking a certain way. Meanwhile, like, have you lifted for longer than a year? You know, like, so yeah, now, oh my God, it's crazy. Like my clients always get trolled on the internet because they're like, you know, what did you take? And like, I have a lot of guys that are on TRT and I have guys who aren't, but it has to be all this other shit. Because God forbid they've been lifting for 10 years. Like that has nothing to do with it.
True.
So I take it as a compliment. Like I've learned to not get so annoyed, but it is also dismissive of the work they have put in. So I kind of try to recognize that too.
And these days, TRT is kind of like it's the way to say that you're not natty, but not really, fully dive into everything that you're taking. Cause there's so many guys with physiques that are not TRT physiques who just say, I'm on TRT.
Mm-hmm.
And to them, TRT is 250 milligrams of testosterone a week with 250 of nandrolone and 50 milligrams of Anavar and a few IUs of GH. And they're like, it's TRT because it's coming from a TRT clinic. Or, it was prescribed. So and I'm like, this is not TRT. And unfortunately, there's so many young guys now thinking, oh, I need TRT. Yeah. When at least like when I was coming up, it was that guy's on steroids. I didn't, conflate TRT and steroids. I knew they were two different things, but now they've kind of meshed. And so I think you get a lot of people like coming probably to you. I know they certainly come to Marek, where I've got 22-year-old guys who are like, I think I need TRT because I want to make better gains in the gym. And I'm like, no, what you think you need is steroids, because, and I can't give you that. But what we can do first is try to figure out your lifestyle stuff. So where do you start with your guys who come in? Do you jump straight to getting labs and everything, or do you try to check off those lifestyle boxes first?
Always the lifestyle, because my angle with them is like, listen, even if you do end up being a candidate for TRT, you're going to have to address all of this regardless. So starting there with a food log, seeing where they naturally land, what are their calories? I tell them it's not for me to judge you. I just want to see, where do you naturally fall? Like I said earlier, always have to be higher. So they're pretty low for what they're doing in the gym or outside the gym. And then the intake process involves like understanding what their output is overall. So, how many days are they training, what their diet history is like, because they could be eating well under what they need to for a long time. And it might take a little bit of repair, so to speak. Mm-hmm. If they've never had labs done, I do encourage them to get labs done. If TRT is something they're considering, obviously that's necessary. So I'll explain to them, like, it's always good to get a baseline. Doesn't mean that we're going to jump right on it right away. But, we have to understand where you are, because if you have nothing to compare to, because a lot of guys never have gotten blood work, especially if they're in their 30s, like they never got testosterone tested because they were told they didn't need to, or they were too young, or they looked a certain way. And so then we get them on a training program and a nutrition program that matches each other, because usually those are not matching. It's like excessive output, no calories, or it's not the right fuel for the type of training they're doing. And then kind of assess, like, what's the goal? Where do you want to go? And I ask guys, like, send me a photo of what body kind of emulates what you want to look like. Because most guys, if they're like, well, I want to get jacked and shredded, I need to know what that means. Because to me, that means like thick skin lean. We've got veins on the abs, Mm-hmm. Some guys, that's like a 4-pack. So obviously we all know the commitment level to either side is vastly different. So then they'll send me like, a photo of what they want to look like. And then I could assess, all right, cool. Here's more of a realistic, not a timeline, but what that progress will look like over the course of at least a year. And I'm very transparent. They know I am not a transformation coach. I'm not promising you anything within 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Like, if you want to change, you want to do it right, you need at least a year, at least. Yeah. I mean, how long have you guys been lifting?
Over a decade for me.
I was going to say same. And I like that you start with at least a year, because obviously we all know it's going to not just be a year. It's going to take you doing it for the rest of your life, basically.
And I probably worked out for 5 years before going down like anabolic use. And I think it was too early still. Yeah. If I could go back, I would have maximized my potential a lot better. I still didn't fully have a firm grasp on progressive overload. I don't think my nutrition was dialed in. And I was just thinking that, I've hit my genetic potential because I'm not making gains anymore. But I never had a logbook. I was just going in and doing whatever workout my friends and I wanted to do. No rhyme or reason, like, oh, lat pull sounds fun today, or what machine's open, and now knowing, I was like, I should have been really targeted and I should have tried progressive overload. And I probably could have got to where I got with gear naturally. Which is like, what Josh actually did it in a much smarter way. And that's why his physique was so much better than mine, because as a natural, he had a really good foundation. So when he added in a little bit of anabolics, it was just like, mind blowing. And a lot of guys make my mistake, but even earlier now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I don't get so many questions on SARMs, but I know they ask them.
Oh, yeah.
And like I'll have like the fathers will be like, my son's asking me about like ostrine, and I'm like, oh my God, like really? Has he been in the gym longer than like a week? You know, like that's literally the first question. And it's so weird because it's not what diet and what training program anymore. It's everything else.
Right. I kind of hate the way that everything is advertised these days, because at least when I was coming up, it was really hush hush. Like I've joked that I legitimately did not know if, like the Olympians were on steroids or not, just because I wasn't in the know. And, I was in a small little country town, and all I could rely on was forums. And a lot of those were behind walls that you would have to be accepted into to even talk about steroids, So we would be like, are these guys on steroids? I think so. But we didn't even really know what steroids were. But now everybody talks about it so openly, and every clinic advertises it in that, like, TRT is what makes these Olympians the Olympians. And that kind of sucks because so many people are expecting so much more out of it. I know on my first cycle, which was not TRT, it was about 5 times a TRT dose. I was really underwhelmed, honestly. I was like, that's all, and then I thought, and I perpetuated this belief where, oh, it just wasn't good gear. It wasn't good gear. Like 3 years in, other people still must have better gear than me because I'm not making the results that I thought I was going to. And it took a long time before I had that internal like reflection of maybe it's me, maybe my training sucks and I haven't dialed in my diet and everything. And it's funny, when I finally realized that, I was basically on TRT at this point, when I finally dialed in my diet and my training, and I had the best physique I'd ever had, So the lifestyle stuff is huge. Like the best drug I tell people is food and sleep. You can even have a shit training protocol. If you have your food really dialed in and you're sleeping really well, you're probably going to make pretty good physique progress.
Absolutely. And just the way it's advertised, to Adam and I talk about it a lot now, of just like, it's always are you tired? Are you this? Like things that we all struggle with, right? Just even if we are on testosterone or have all the lifestyle factors dialed in. So when guys see that, they automatically think like, that's the answer to my problem. That's why all these other guys are able to do this and I'm not. And I just hate that because, it's great that people like you, Ali, even address the lifestyle stuff first, because it's like, even if we go down that route, you're not even going to get the full benefits of it unless I at least get you for maybe a year or two just to dial all this in. So I wish I could get all guys to do that instead of going to these little pop-up tea clinics that are everywhere now.
I mean, here in Florida, you could go to like the gas station and get a script for Winstrol and God knows, like it's crazy. And I try to relate as much as possible. And your story, like you said, I mean, I haven't told this story in forever, but I think I was maybe 26 or 27 and working at a commercial gym. And some guy approached me, like the typical story. He's like, do you want some Anavar? I can sell it to you. And I'm like, what's Anavar? Like, and he's like, it'll give you that ripped look. And it was like these orange tablets. I have no clue if it actually was Anavar, obviously. And then he sold me what he said was Winstrol, right? Which was this white milky substance. God knows what the hell that was. And like, I injected it maybe once or twice. And then I was like, this isn't doing anything. And of course I'm 26. Like I'm not eating enough. I'm probably not training hard enough. I'm working as a trainer in a commercial gym. And I'm like, why am I not like turning into this like, shredded physique that I see in the magazines and stuff? Because I didn't know any better. Like these kids don't know any better. But when all they're being bombarded with is, like you said, this is the media and this is what, people are talking about. Now they have threads like Reddit and social, like we didn't have social media back then. Thank God, because God knows what rabbit holes we'd be down for that. But it's so true. And I'm like, listen, I've been there, like, and I'm open with guys that I've been on TRT for 2 years. I haven't had any crazy side effects like you guys keep hearing about. It's not that scary, but I do have to I had to dial in all the lifestyle stuff. I used to have breast implants. I got very sick from that. I had to address all of that until the hormones came, because it's like adding, fuel on sticks. Like you don't have this massive foundation of kindling that's going to make the fire roar. So totally pull that analogy out of my ass.
It was a good one. Don't worry.
A little aside, I was just curious, when you said you have guys send you pictures of their like goal physique, what is that these days? I think my body dysmorphia is so skewed, but what are average guys wanting to look like these days?
Good question.
Yeah, I'm interested.
It ranges. Ryan Reynolds is one that's quite often.
Okay.
And one of my best friends, Don Saladino, trains him. And so I'm like, Don, all these guys want to look like Ryan. Ryan's really tall and he's been naturally lean, for a long time in his life, but he has been with Don for years. And so the shreddiness over the course of the years is because of all the lifestyle stuff that they've implemented. Now I get a lot more of like these CrossFitters that are yoked, and they're like, this is goal physique. And I'm like, cool. So how many years we working together? Because it's going to take a while. And I try
like
not
a Ryan Fisher, Jason Khalifa,
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I don't want to crush their dreams, but I'm like, this is what it's going to take. Like, it's going to take years of doing the same boring shit over and over again, cycling higher and lower calories. Are you okay with that? Because this is also, and it might involve injecting things later on. I don't push PEDs, but if they need testosterone, that might be a consideration. But it's knowing, okay, don't compare yourself to somebody who's incredibly enhanced, but they don't know that, because I asked them for a photo. So they send me something that they want to look like. All right, well, I have to give them the reality, because I'm not going to be like, yeah, we could achieve that in like 19 months, no problem. So nowadays it's a lot more of that. And, Instagram is part of this, because it's not, just actors on TV. I've gotten Jason Bateman. I've gotten couple WWE guys like Bobby Lashley, like wrestlers, because some dudes just want that big look. They don't necessarily need like defined 8-pack. So
that's funny. It's interesting to me because, like, when you say Ryan Reynolds, I'm just like, like you wouldn't need anything to get there, really. And I'm sure Josh is the same way, because Josh has been, 250 pounds lean as hell at, 5'10". Is that what you are? 5'9"?
On a good day, yes.
Yeah, but absolutely huge and ripped. And our minds are so skewed that it's funny. Like when I hear guys say, I want to look like Hugh Jackman, they think they need all these drugs for him. Like, that's funny. Like, that dude barely looks like he lifts to me, because my mind is so skewed. I'm thinking of I was thinking maybe Chris Bumstead's, things like that are going to take a lot of gear and stuff. But there's so many guys with these, like Ryan Reynolds. I mean, honestly, you just need to diet for a little bit to look like that and do some body weight work. Like a lot of these goals aren't that hard to achieve, and you don't need to jump to extremes. So if you're just looking at Hollywood actors and you're hoping to be like them, like a Zac Efron or Ryan Reynolds or I don't know, Hugh Jackman, like, you probably just need to have good nutrition. You don't necessarily need to jump into hormones yet. When I started, I wanted to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. That was my my idol.
Which you wouldn't have needed hormones for either.
No, yeah. And then, I got in, and probably 2 years in, I remember taking progress pictures, and I was just trumping him, I'm like, damn. And I still felt so small. So it's just funny. I was interested to hear how the progression goes, because before this, we were talking about body dysmorphia, and I certainly have it. And I think as soon as you start lifting, like, there was a old Dom Mazzetti thing, like the day you start lifting is the day you'll be forever small. And I think it's so true, because as soon as you actually like hit what you thought was your goal, you're like, that's so puny. I need to be bigger. I need to be bigger. And for me, that's when like the drugs came in. But just all that to say, if you're like, in your 30s or 40s and you're just hoping to have an athletic type physique, like some of these Hollywood models do, you don't need SARMs, and you probably don't need to jump straight to anabolics. And we'll talk about TRT and when it's actually needed. But I just like to get out there that TRT isn't the end all be all or the panacea, as you say. And I think you preach that a lot.
Like you said, the food and the sleep, like I'm the same way. Cause if I get like a Ryan Reynolds or a similar physique sent to me, I'm like, oh, that's it. Like,
okay. Cause you're bigger than Ryan Reynolds,
Yeah,
you're like
all right.
Those arms are cute. Like my forearms are as big as his biceps.
Oh, we're so fucked up in the head. Cause like for women, guys too, like if you have a great physique and you get really lean, anything above that leanness is obesity.
Yeah.
So that's where I live. Being a female, I still have, I'm female. I love Dana Lynn Bailey. I love her look. Like I've always wanted to emulate her and stuff like that. And then, I started to look like her because soccer players, we don't have big shoulders. So I finally grew some shoulders, and it was like awesome. And now they're never big enough. And when I say big, like, capped enough. And I work out at not in LA Fitness, Lifetime. And so the Lifetime, they think I'm like an IFBB pro there. And when I go down to like Redcon, I'm like, wow, I'm like the smallest, most least muscular person. And Kai Green's like right next to me. And I'm like, yeah. So it's funny, like the vision of ourselves, because people are like, oh, are you competing? And I'm like, no, I'm just living, but thank you.
Yeah.
You know?
It is.
Was
And
she
I
kind
think
of the person that you wanted to emulate when you first got into it, Allie, or with different goals for you?
For Dana?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, like I don't even remember. One of my best girlfriends actually competed with her the first, I think 2013 when they first had women's physique.
Mhm.
And then I think that's when Dana started her brand and just her personality and all that. I had her haircut, like, but blonde. I had her haircut and everything. It was kind of borderline obsession. Like, I thought she's really cool. And I finally met her at the Olympia in Orlando 2 years ago. And I was doing some work with Muscle and Fitness. So I got to go backstage. And I was not prepared for this. And so I had a sweatshirt that was satire on, and it said, maybe it's Tren. And I was like, probably not the best sweatshirt to take a picture with her in. Kind of
it's
like
probably perfect.
standing like this. I'm like, hi. And I was like so nervous because I was so caught off guard that all I could say was that my friend Jillian says hi. She's like, oh my God, I haven't talked to her in forever. And then I'm like, is this really what I'm going to say to her? Like, because it was so awkward because she was waiting to give a trophy and there's like 4 people back there, you know? So, but yeah, that's who I wanted to emulate. I love like that shredded look, you know? I call it like compact and small, but shreddy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, I personally don't want to look like a female bodybuilder, but I'm 5'3" and about 130 pounds. And so playing soccer, it's just like you're a natural athlete. So it's that little compactness, I guess. So yeah, I'm always striving to just maintain that and keep that and maybe get bigger shoulders, you know. And of course, now everyone wants a big butt. And that was like so not in. Like when I was younger,
Yeah,
like we
funny.
hid our butt. Like we had a sweatshirt around our waist because all of us soccer players had this big badonk and then it wasn't cool and now it's cool again. I'm like, we could have like, we really should have known this because then we would have all continued our lower body training. And now like here in Florida, all the women just train butt. Like that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's so funny too when you look at like the influencers, you know, who they'll just all they need is high-waisted pants because almost everybody has a little bit of the top 2 like lines. All you need is to bring your pants up to those first 2 top lines and have a big butt, and you're like the fitness epitome. And I'm like, you realize if she took that off, she would probably look not that great, you know, as far as and I don't want to say anybody doesn't look good, teacher, you know, trying to be politically correct here, but they're not like some super jacked fitness, you know, person. It's just funny now, like to be like a fitness influencer as a female these days, really all you need is high-waisted pants with a good butt contour. It's kind of
And
funny.
it has the scrunch. Do you guys notice this? Like most of my
Yes.
guy friends think it's like the weirdest shit because it feels like you have a wedgie when you
Mhm.
wear it. Like you have a
Yeah.
thong up your ass as you're wearing leggings. And I'm just like, how is it like this is not comfortable? And it's supposed to create the illusion of a bigger butt. And I bought a pair and I'm like, nothing's grown. Like, you know, and I look at the girls at the gym and I just like, it's intriguing to me, like their workouts and how they go about them. And I'm just like, this is so not how it was when I was growing up. Like they wear like the, you know, the Gymshark, like short shorts with like the Nike blazers. And then the shorts go up to like, you know, their chest. And like back when I started working out, it was still like Adidas tearaway pants that like were not flattering whatsoever. And then we had like the low leggings where it was like literally like almost like below the butt crack type of style, you know, crop tops weren't really a thing. So
It's funny.
It's funny
One
you
other
say
thing
that, Allie, because my wife and I will watch Making the Team, like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleading show, because I'm based in Dallas. And like the episodes that are like 2010, 2011, it's hilarious to see how they would dress when they worked out, like the Nike soccer shorts, a basic t-shirt. Like it almost makes me miss those days. I'm like, God, that's back when like people did not really care what they wore. They just put on athletic clothes and went and worked out.
Totally. And if you go to like a real lifting gym or like a powerlifting gym, the women still wear that. And I'm like, okay, cool. My cotton t-shirts that I cut up, you know, 20 years ago or whatever, I could still wear now. But in like a lifetime, I'm like homeless looking if I wear that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the one last like little aside that I want to say on physique towards men who are listening too is like getting bigger as you mature is probably something you're not really going to want to do. Like I know you probably get more of the Ryan Reynolds because you work with more mature adults above 30. You know, when you're 20, you think that I just want to be huge and big. And Josh and I have both, I think, found this like 2 years ago, I was 245, pretty darn big, and I bought a suit, and I was lean, but I bought a suit, a really fitted, nice suit for, super expensive. And I just looked fat in it. And I'm like, when I didn't feel like I was professional looking at all, and now dropping down 30 pounds, being like 200 now, bought a suit and I look awesome, where I look fit and toned. And, a lot of, I feel like so many guys are focused on size and big, but like as you mature, it's really not that great. And you're probably better off just being functional, doing more of like a CrossFit or a functional training and getting that more Ryan Reynolds physique. Just interesting how society even looks at you too. Like I've had this conversation with other professionals where I have my best friend, we went to school together. He became a dentist, and he's a really good power lifter, super strong, but he's huge and he's jacked and lean. And every day he's trying to actively hide his gains because he feels like people kind of look down at him for being too big. When he's like in his scrubs, like you almost don't look professional because there's a difference between like this person takes care of themselves and that's a status symbol in itself, and that's awesome. But then there gets too big when it's this person only cares about that, and they're probably not great at business or dentistry or whatever, So it's kind of a little in between. But I would tell most guys, you probably don't need to run all the drugs that you think you do. You don't need to be a Chris Bumstead. It's funny when you actually talk to a lot of professional bodybuilders, they can't wait till they can downsize and fit in normal clothes and be normal people. Like this is a job for them that they don't really love to do. They were good at it and they fell into it in the beginning. They did. But, when you listen to like Fuad and those guys talk, every single one of them will be like, I can't wait to be 220 pounds and just fit in normal clothes and be able to run and be able to enjoy snowboarding and surfing and stuff, So for young guys listening, I know I'm not going to change your mind because I was there, but you probably don't need to do all the gear to try to look like, C-Bum, because as soon as he doesn't need to be that way anymore, he's going to want to look like you.
That's a great point. And it was a couple of years ago, I did a talk. I always try to open my talks with like some sort of strange story or something to make people laugh. I'm big on memes and things like that because, there's sensitive topics within men's health. But I was talking about G.I. Joe and how G.I. Joe has changed over the years. And G.I. Joe in the 40s was more Ryan Reynolds. And now G.I. Joe of like the 2000s is like, I don't even think somebody could physically obtain that physique. Similar to Barbie, like if Barbie was real, I think she would fall over or some shit. Like,
yeah.
So it was crazy how like that has emulated or that has evolved in addition to superheroes and how they have evolved very much in line to similar to how bodybuilding has evolved and the look that they go for. Yet socially, if you look like you lift, and T-Nation quoted me on this, saying if you look like you lift, automatically, because our society is so unhealthy, everyone thinks that you're on steroids automatically.
Yeah.
Where I'm sure you guys get it too. Like you go through the airport, do you do CrossFit? Do you compete? Blah, blah, blah. You're so fit. Questions everywhere because it's like you're the outlier. And so it's very weird because you're used to now being looked at or being questioned for looking healthy, right? Not the massive physiques that we're just talking about, but even just having visible muscle, you get labeled.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's time to talk about the stuff that'll get us canceled for sure right here. So one thing that I've noticed, which pisses me off so much, that ever since I started my fitness journey, I've gotten body shamed so much more than any other obese or even, anybody. I've never once been at work or something and donuts come out. Somebody grabs a donut and somebody goes, yeah, you're going to get that fat ass, But if a fit person says, I don't want that, everyone will start to make jokes. Oh, Adam can't have a donut. Like that is the exact same thing. You're making fun of me for my choices. Like what would happen if I turned that back on you and said, oh, of course you're going to have a donut. You always have a donut. I'd get fired probably. I'd go to
jail.
Exactly. But it's so socially acceptable to talk shit. Like if you were to bring, your Tupperware to an outing, everyone's going to have something to say. But if somebody brought, a Big Mac and popped it out, everybody'd be fine with it. It's so weird that it's like, it baffles me. I think I've been body shamed more than any overweight person ever has been.
Totally. I always think about if things were flipped and people like, we came at people with remarks similar. It literally like we would be the worst people on earth. Like, people would talk shit about us and everything, but it's bizarre how like you can't flip the script because then that's going to be, the most derogatory thing that you could ever say, yet happening to us all the time is totally fine.
It's interesting.
Oh, those
And
fit
then
people.
another thing you had touched on was, the evolution of what men see as an ideal, like G.I. Joe. Actually did one of my majors in sociology, and the research that I did for my senior project was on male body image. And I talked about that, how, now I guess we're talking a little bit about everybody's feelings, but back then when I was graduating, we really didn't talk about men's feelings and things like that, and body image. And I dealt with an eating disorder pretty severely. It's actually what got me into bodybuilding, is it kind of saved me from my eating disorder, because I was so convinced that I needed to just have abs. Like I said, I wanted to be Brad Pitt. He was just super lean with abs. And so my obsession led me to the point where I was basically turned anorexic and bulimic. And so I kind of had this affinity to look into it. And it was something that when I looked back, and I did it through innovation or interview style kind of research, and I interviewed all these guys at the gym and stuff, and talked like, who were your heroes growing up? For me, it was all superhuman. I loved action figures and comic books. And if you look at those guys, they are shredded. Their quads are so, like you said, it just wouldn't even be anatomically like possible. They're so big. They're all like Ronnie Coleman or bigger,
Yeah.
And that's what I grew up thinking, this is a normal man. And then all we talk about is how much pressure women have put on them because there's pretty women in magazines, but never the reverse on men. And that's what I kind of did my research on. I thought it was super interesting. And I talked about, like even just working out is really a beauty practice. I mean, a bicep curl has really no functionality in life other than, carrying your groceries or something like that. But it's, we kind of hide it in masculinity, but it's essentially the same thing as like putting on mascara or something like that. Guys are in there doing beauty practices. So I just thought it was an interesting thing. And it's interesting you've picked up on that too and talk about that.
I think also like with the golfers too, a lot of people will say in the golf fitness world that like golfers don't want to look a certain way, or if you train like a bodybuilder, then it's going to destroy your golf swing and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I guess circling back to what I noticed when I trained them, it always came to a conversation about how do I get rid of this? How do I, get bigger arms, stuff like that. And I was like, well, you could actually train for golf and to look good at the same time. Like that's allowed, but it still came down to looking great naked is something that I would think most guys or people would want, even if they didn't say they want it. So guys would front with like, yeah, I want to hit it farther. I want to do this. But then it always came back to some sort of dietary conversation or aesthetics conversation. Because I think in general, most people probably care about, what they look like. And then the people who don't, I think, are aware of what they look like. And maybe just they don't have the motivation or, want to make changes. And that's why they go after us for our choices and stuff. But it's weird how we grew up with the superheroes looking a certain way and, all of that. How did we expect that not to create a body image issue? But it's okay that Barbie created major body image issues for all women. And it was only one Barbie doll and similarly like one G.I. Joe. And now obviously they're politically correct and everything, but still, I mean, that's a great point because body image is a big thing with guys. They talk about it with me. Like literally when we were saying like when you get super lean and then anything above that is obese or considered obese, like guys freak out about the scale. They freak when their abs blur out. Like they have a very difficult time, similar to me, where if you have to bring calories up and you get fluffy, that's the hardest thing to talk them off the ledge about. And I'm like, just give it time. If we dropped your carbs by 100 tomorrow, this would all go away. So do you care about what the scale says, or do you care about what you want to look like? And that's why, the scale is only a part of what we measure progress by. But they look in the mirror, and if like they feel like, one ab is blurred out because they ate more carbs, it's a problem. And no one talks about that because they don't, or they didn't talk about that as openly as we do now.
Yeah. I mean, they still don't. I feel like it's hard. Sometimes, since I have the history with a pretty severe eating disorder, I can see when there's a client coming to me who has it. I can just hear certain things and I try to get them to admit it to me. It's just me and the client, and I'm trying to, and it's usually so hard. Finally, sometimes they'll admit it. But a lot of times I'm like, I can tell everything that you're telling me, or I can see on your fingers that you have marks from your teeth because you're gagging yourself, because I've had those before, and they're lying to me. Guys are not. And this is even somebody who's saying like, hey, behind closed doors, I can't tell anybody else. I'm a man who's been through this. I just told you my story, and they still don't want to open up to me. Because it is a huge attack, on your masculinity, because men are supposed to kind of just wake up and look good with their 5 o'clock shadow, and they should look good with their scruffy hair, and their body should just be good to go. There should be no effort put into it. So as soon as you admit that I obsess about the way that I look, and I put a lot of effort and energy and time into the way that I look, you're now more feminine, and so I think it's important to have these conversations and let guys know that we're all thinking that stuff, and we do care a lot about it, and it's okay to care a lot about it. And it's okay to be open about that. You don't have to hide it internally. It's cool that they're able to talk to you about that kind of stuff, because it can be nice to, you go your whole life without being able to share it with anybody. I know I did. I always felt chubby and fat as a kid, and I felt like I couldn't really talk to anybody about that because I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't supposed to care about that. I was supposed to be like all the other boys that were just good at sports and looked good. And the funny thing is, they were probably caring too, and I didn't even know.
But just admitting that or talking about it, it does so much for guys, because whenever they hear someone else's story, especially another guy, then they're like, oh my God, I'm not alone. And I try to reiterate that to them all the time with like the sexual performance stuff. And, you're not alone. Obviously, a lot of this stuff can be very traumatic, but I would say a lot of people deal with body image issues if you're in the spotlight, which the spotlight can just be like an Instagram post.
Yeah.
People won't post things on Instagram, or they're terrified. I use filters all the time because it's like one of my deepest fears is someone ripping me apart for how I look. I don't know why. I shouldn't care. And people say, I don't care what people think. And I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You're full of shit.
Yeah. Like, come on. It takes
Exactly.
a lot for us to put ourselves out there, but that it's somebody who's dealing with something a lot deeper when they tear us apart, but it's still hard, to confront if someone goes after your physical appearance that you can't really change right away, stuff like that. But so many guys deal with it. And a lot of guys who grew up a certain way, maybe they didn't have a father in the photo, so they don't have the confidence. And then they didn't have sports or anything because maybe they couldn't afford to play them. And so they were overweight. And then they get to high school, and then they discover lifting weights, and it's like something that is changing their life. And then they realize that that's amazing, but they don't talk about the past and what led them to that. And the fact that you guys openly talk about that stuff. Did you deal with the eating disorder as well, Josh?
No, to be honest, I was, Adam knows this about me. I was kind of just the weirdo who just liked training when I got into it. There was no like real hidden meaning as to why I got into it. But I feel like the one positive that has given me is like functionality and performance is probably what I care about more than anything when it comes to my training. And I try and like give that perspective to anybody that I help is like, hey, the byproduct of this is that you are going to get more in shape. You're going to look better, but like your confidence should come from that you're doing something for yourself that's going to let you live longer in a much healthier fashion, do the things that you like more. And like, you should kind of feel like a badass about yourself, that you are performing at a higher level than you were, and that will only continue to progress. So trying to change. And I think that's something the fitness industry could do a lot better job of too, is like not making it all about how you look. And I understand that's what sells. It's how social media is driven, but giving people the confidence in like their performance increasing, just, giving back to themselves to live a longer, healthier life, to me, trumps how they're going to look in the long run. So.
Oh yeah. That's why I love having clients who are not all show.
Mm-hmm.
They can go. Like, strength is a big part of it. And like you said, usually the aesthetics are the byproduct of that. And we'll mix it in and stuff. But man, like if you could PR and do loaded chin-ups and, your deadlift goes up and like stuff that you never thought possible because you thought you're too old to deadlift or whatever, that's really cool. Yeah. Like I like that stuff, So I think that you're right. Like the industry is very superficial, and it could even be like I'll talk about how a lot of people don't have a history of lifting old school, meaning like rest periods beyond 30 seconds with the compound lifts, because that's just not what they came into. They came into the CrossFit Orange Theory type of training and don't have the foundation of like those heavy, grindy sets or what that feels like to build that dense muscle. And they're like, what do you mean rest? Like 3 minutes? Like that's an eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And showing them that world alone, they're like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
And I just think people that do struggle, obviously coming from whether it's eating disorder background or just struggle more with that than others in general, shifting their focus to being, all about, not all about, but more on the performance side of things. And like, look at what you're able to do that you weren't 6 months ago, possibly could like alleviate so much of, oh, I'm not as defined as I was, that whole side of things.
Non-scale win.
Yeah, that's 100% the thing that I think kind of fixed me. I will always have things in the back of my head, but when I first got into bodybuilding, it helped for a while. It helped until I needed to cut, and then everything came back, whereas like now I need to be lean and I can never get big again. So what actually helped me was transitioning to performance sports. Like I found CrossFit where there was no mirrors. Nobody talked about how much body fat you had. It didn't matter. If you had no abs and you were able to do a sub 3 minute Fran, you were just as cool as the guy with a six pack, or cooler, because you're probably faster than him. You look at some of the top podium athletes at CrossFit and they don't have that great of physiques sometimes. Sometimes they really do, but other times, and nobody comments on it, which is cool. So that kind of helped me a lot, finding performance, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, CrossFit, things where my worth was more gauged on what I could do rather than what I looked like.
Yeah. And just like we all know when you're that lean too, like 9 times out of 10, you feel like crap. Like if you're like stage lean and trying to explain that to the average person, like, yeah, you could get there, but it's going to, 1, almost be impossible to maintain. And 2, you're going to hate it, 9 times out of 10, because you're going to feel like crap most of the day. Your performance is going to suck. So like, wouldn't you rather have a mix of those? For sure. Maybe you don't have 6-pack abs, but you're deadlifting more than you ever have in your life.
True. I think we got pretty cool perspective from you, Ali, on that kind of stuff, because I don't know how much you talk about this kind of stuff, and I didn't expect it to go down this road. I want to talk a little bit more about your bread and butter, which is, I think, lower testosterone, and I'm guessing you see a lot of that. Is that something that is newer? How do you feel about men's testosterone as a whole? Kind of, is it declining, or is it kind of average? Do people think they have more issues than they do when it comes to testosterone? Kind of what are you seeing with your clients?
I think I would say in the last 5 years, it's become more on their radar. And that could either be because there's more education about it, or because I've talked so much about it. When they find me, they know what they're getting into. So very, very few people are like, what do you do? They know from Instagram and stuff. So automatically they feel comfortable asking me those questions. And it's more like, I don't know if I'm low T, because like you alluded to all those symptoms before. If you Google that, it'll tell you that like you're dying of some terminal illness. It's not going to say low testosterone if you look up like, low energy. So I think the culmination of all those symptoms, and then just feeling, I don't want to say less of a man, but less of a man in the sense they don't have that winning drive to dominate like they used to. And this could be in relationships of any kind, in the work environment, just like they had ambition and then all of a sudden it's kind of gotten taken away from them. And then that makes their physical capacity to move decline as well. So they start questioning themselves, and then they're like, well, I'm probably depressed. And then they go down the road of the antidepressants, and then nothing gets fixed. And you guys are very familiar with all of that. So it's usually they've been to several different doctors and have been dismissed for even considering low T, and they just want the truth. And we have that very transparent discussion of like, what are you dealing with? Maybe they had labs, maybe they didn't. And if they had labs, their test levels like in the 300 or 400s, but of course they were told they're fine. And we know they're not. So it's really addressing from the whole perspective that it's probably not just testosterone, but like you said, lifestyle. So let's fix all the things that we can from all other arenas in your life. And then it might be testosterone. So very rarely have I seen guys' levels like escalate so high just from fixing their
Mhm.
their lifestyle. Maybe I think
Especially, oh, I was just going to say, especially at a certain age, I think that if you're probably in your 20s with low testosterone, I don't think you need to be plagued with that for the rest of your life if your lifestyle's been a mess. If you're an obese 20-year-old and you're playing video games and eating McDonald's every day, I think you have a lot better capacity to increase your natural testosterone and go on if you lose the weight and start doing the lifestyle stuff. But yeah, a 55-year-old guy who, we're probably, I kind of tell them, like, we're probably not going to get you up into like a 900 naturally. It's just not going to occur. I don't know. And then I wonder, and maybe this is something that I'm curious your take on it. We get told a lot that guys' levels are declining. One thing that I question is I don't think we've ever really tested levels at the rate that we do now. So I don't think it's an accurate comparison to say guys' levels were X in the 70s and now they're this, because we have such a bigger data pool now. I don't think we're really testing as many guys as we did then. That would be one argument that I have against the declining. And then the other would just be, I wonder how much of it is guys declining or just guys' outlook on life changing and just society around us being different. We just talked to our friend Lucas the other day on the podcast about this, and I was questioning him, like, our parents' generation or their parents, I can't imagine them going to anybody complaining about I'm tired and not motivated. It just wasn't something that they could do. It was like, these are guys who at 17 were lying about their age to go fight Nazis, like they saw hundreds of thousands of people dead on, the shores of Normandy in front of them. Like, these aren't guys that were going to come home and be like, oh, I don't really feel like going to work today. They just sucked it up. And I wonder if just like the lifestyle and the mental capacity to suck things up almost, enhances your testosterone naturally too. Sometimes I wonder about that. Like, we talk about all the axes, the gut mind axis. Like, I wonder the mind hormonal axis, and I don't have any data to support this, but I feel like guys who have more drive and push themselves to do harder things, and I think they just unnaturally kind of have higher levels, where guys who are like, woe is me, and like, I'm bored, I want to play video games, like I'll just go on porn instead of go get a girl. I think those kind of behaviors naturally lower testosterone. Do you see that too? Or do you have a similar theory or opposing theory?
I haven't thought about it that way, but I think you're right. Like, what actual statistical data do we have? Like, when we read that X levels were this, in the 80s and 90s, like how much of a pool were they testing from? I 100% agree with like the suck it up factor. That probably drives me insane. And with a coach, being a coach, like the hardest thing to teach online is intensity with lifting. And so some of my guys, I gotta like, dance. Some of the guys, I'm like, dude, like literally I warm up with your top set. What is going on? And they're like, oh, I'm a bitch. And I'm like, yeah, like, do you use straps? Like, that'll allow you to lift heavier. And they're like against straps because they think it'll destroy their grip. And I'm like, anything's going to exceed your grip. Like, we're not training for a competition here. Just use them and lift heavier. Or too much tech. I love tech. I've got Aura, I've got Garmin. I'm not going to say, oh, my Garmin says slow down, therefore I'm not going to do jack shit all day. I think they're very quick to listen to their device and not go by how they feel. And that culture doesn't exist anymore. And even more so, like the gym culture used to help guys with that or help feed that. So you used to go train with friends, and that would be an environment where there's no cell phones because we didn't really have them. There's loud music. It's dirty. There's screaming. Like, people are motivating you. Now you see 3 kids at a gym. They all have headphones on. They're on their phone. They're not really
a tripod.
training. Yeah.
Broccoli haircut.
Completely different. Yeah. When I was speaking in St. Louis 2 weeks ago, we went to this gym called House of Pain, and I was like in love. Like, that would be like the one reason I would go back is for that gym, because they had like a Nebula hack squat. You don't see that anywhere. They had Nautilus. They've got Paramount. They've got Arsenal. They've got like prime equipment. Big sign that said no cell phones. Panera's down the street. And I was like, this is amazing. They had a kitchen, with like microwave and a fridge for all like the meatheads. And I was like, this is so awesome. Dirty, old equipment. that culture, like I felt at home, I felt understood, like, you know, people respect you're there, they don't bother you, stuff like that. That does not really exist so much anymore. And so I think that helped enhance people's, like, you know, drive and ambition in the gym. People don't do hard things anymore. We don't have to. We don't have to get up and change the TV channel like we did in the 80s. We can just
not
do it.
even that. That's crazy. I didn't even think of that. You used to have to get up to change a TV. Yeah, you don't even have to do that.
Or like shake it, you know. In the 90s,
figure out where the wires went, put some tinfoil,
antenna, like, you know, figuring it out. And like, you know,
That's
in the
funny.
90s to reach over and like roll the window down was an effort. And you actually had to go around to the other side of the car to unlock it with 2 keys.
Yeah.
So that's huge. We also had to physically hide in the bushes to stalk guys in middle school. You can do it from Facebook now. So that, and like, you know, sit on the couch, you press buttons, you can order alcohol, you can order food, you can order literally anything from Amazon, a husband and wife, wear diapers, people are into that shit, and not move, and you're fine. And so we don't actually have to do that type of stuff. And socially, God forbid you confront somebody and do hard things by having a tough conversation. She'll get canceled, you're labeled something, like everyone's so delicate and offended by everything. Like when I look at PowerPoint slides that I used before 2020 compared to now, and mine are pretty borderline offensive. So you can imagine how many jokes I used to drop. I'm like, can't use this, can't use this, can't use this.
Yeah.
So I think that like collectively, that's probably contributed more than we realize, in addition to statistically not having the data to back it up. That's a great point.
I wish that, I don't think it would be possible to study. There's just way too many variables. You know, I mean, maybe you could take some like indigenous tribes who just live off the land and look at their serum levels and then compare it to the average American. But still, it would be like there's diet and there's technology. There's so many conflicting variables. But it just seems as though the more comfortable we do get a decline. And maybe there's some evolutionary like explanation there. Now I'm thinking about it, you know, as things get easier, maybe we don't need as much testosterone to facilitate the effort that we once did, you know? So just philosophizing here, but it's kind of interesting that
I think it would be interesting just even to look at people who still live a rural lifestyle in the States, though. That could be a pool that you could pull from, that wake up and work their land every day and are not as connected, obviously, via technology, or have a much harder lifestyle than people that live a city life. You know, that could at least be a good, I guess, look into what could be the differences there.
Those are hands down my favorite like clients. We've got a guy who's been very successful because he's a hard worker, and he's down in, where's he in? I don't know, one of the southern states. I don't know why I just forgot. I'll remember.
Just
Louisiana, maybe. He's just worked, you know, his whole life, and now he's very, very successful and owns a very big company. And Atlas coaches him for nutrition. He does all of his stuff, his medical stuff through Marek. And the guy is, you know, in his 60s when he came to us. He had, you know, diabetes and low testosterone, but he was still working so hard like that. When we got him the treatment, like he has had such amazing results because he was been doing the work the whole time. And it's funny because when those guys come to you, they're the ones that tell you I'm fine, and my son or my wife or my coach or something made me get these. And I say, do you have any symptoms? Nope. Like I'm fine. I don't know. My son made me come sign up. He watches that Derek guy. He told me I need to do this, and I'm finally giving in. So he'll shut up. And I'm like, dude, your testosterone's 200. And he's like, I don't know. I still work every day and I'm fine, you know? Yeah. And it's cool though, because those guys who have built that mental toughness, like when you put things in, when you give them the ability to go even higher, like it's so profound. Like Josh, when I talked about him, you know, like since he hit this natural potential and he got there, like when you added in the anabolics, like his physique just blossomed. And then conversely, there's so many guys who have low testosterone but don't have the background, and when you add it in, they're the ones that come back 3 months later and say this isn't doing anything for me. And, you know, so I think there's a lot that goes in, and the psychology of it is huge. And it's interesting how I think the psychology does play on the hormones.
Oh, big time. And I failed to mention, like, when I talk about my approach in lectures, I've coined this term GPP for TRT. It's like general physical prep. And the concept is to get guys as resilient as possible before they go on TRT. And that's more towards like a 15% body fat area, because anything higher, like obviously body fat's very inflammatory, but your body's, suppressing testosterone for a reason. And so if you're trying to put a hormone in it that doesn't want it, it can create kind of like a shitstorm, for lack of more scientific words. But
Yeah.
just positioning it that way plays into like, let's clean up everything about, your life and get you in a position to actually be resilient and handle hard things. Because as soon as something maybe goes sideways or you don't feel the same, then they lose their mind.
Yeah.
So like you said, having the ability to just push through stuff is very useful. And that's a skill that you can't really teach. It has to be learned. And they can do that in the gym, because how else are you going to duplicate losing decades of like actual hard, grindy, hard work? You can do that in the gym. Like, what is failure? People don't know what their failure is. Like
True.
They use things like reps in reserve and, leave a few in the tank. That's great if you're an experienced lifter, but like if you're a Gen Pop client and I say, I want you 12 to 15 reps, like you can't do 16, they stop when it starts to get hard. Well, yeah, I can't do 16. But then if you said, I want you to do as many reps as you could, they end up at like 45.
Yeah.
And that goes back to teaching intensity in the gym from online. It's just, one of the harder parts, but at least we can encourage it and kind of show, and this is how you should feel. Like, people should be like, you should make noises in the gym that question whether you're dying or being stabbed. But like, if you make any noise now, it's like the library. Like,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I mean, Adam talks about this a lot too, like from the evidence-based community, kind of like, I guess, go against training that hard. Oh, it's not the most scientific way, or it's not the most optimal way. And it's like, for, as you're saying, like general population, it's different for them. Like they just need to learn what that feels like and learn what that intensity is, the reward feeling that they get afterwards. Like sure, as you progress, like you can really start getting granular with what you want to do.
Right.
But I almost think you have to earn the right to be that way through just brute hard work starting out.
Yeah.
Totally. I have guys who are dialed in with their nutrition. Maybe they're on TRT. They've tried other things. That's all taken care of. They still don't make the progress that they thought they would. Like you said earlier, Adam. And I'm like, it's the intensity in your lifting. And I think also part of it is the garage gyms are awesome. I think it's great that people, because they have kids or whatever, it lets them get their training in. But join a gym just to go for the culture, especially if you're in Texas. Like, man, there's some great gyms there. Yeah. But just to be around other people, just to feed off the energy, even if it's like once a week or on a weekend or something, just so you can get that taste of like being around other people working hard. Because it is tough when you're by yourself in the gym. Like people listen to podcasts and stuff when they train. I'm like, I don't know how. I can't do that yet.
Yeah.
I need, like screamy music.
Yeah. At this point in my life, my training is so small and I'm not trying to make any gains. So I'm honest with myself, like my training's nothing. But yeah, I think that a lot of people just, like you said, they simply don't train hard enough. I mean, Josh is one again to keep sucking his dick here. He's super fit dude. And I trained with him, we did back and I was like, holy shit, dude, my back is going to be sore for like 2 weeks. He's like, oh, this was like a quarter of what I would normally do. And, I believe it because that's what I used to have to do to achieve that physique too. And there's very few people in my life who I've seen actually go to failure. And most people, you can tell when most people just start to get slightly uncomfortable that they give up, they drop the bar or something like that. Like I've had deadlifts where it probably was like 5 minutes long and I look like I'm having a seizure and I'm tweaking, my butt's twerking and my legs are shaking and I'm just stuck like, right below my knee. And I've always been really good at fuck it, I'm not going to quit. Like I would pass out before I drop this bar. And, it looks terrible. I can't post it because people will just remix it of me twerking, right. But if you haven't grinded out a deadlift that takes like, 40 seconds to get from the ground to your hips, like you don't know what failure is, or same with like a squat where like you're trying. And then eventually you just feel like you black out and you collapse and the bar drops. Like that's actual failure. Failure isn't like I came up to the last one and it felt a little bit difficult because it was slightly slower. You know what I mean? And so I agree, training to failure each session is probably not ideal. You probably never need to go to failure. But if you're going to use reps in reserve is based off of what your failure is. So how could you even start doing that until you learn what that is,
I think more people should practice failing, meaning dumping the bar. Like they don't know how. Like if you're coming out of a squat and you can't finish that rep, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this will get you really comfortable with that, when that day comes and you can't complete the rep, you just dump it. Same like with front squat, let it.
Oh, yeah.
I made videos for that. And I did it at an LA Fitness in Florida, and it the gym stopped. It made this noise on the crash bars that like they never hear. And I was like, this is more reason for people to practice this. Cause I have clients, I've asked them like, what are you afraid of when you're squatting or whatever? Well, I don't want to drop it. And I'm like, why? Like there's a reason platforms are built the way they are. There's a reason there's crash bars that you can use, just practice it. And then you're more comfortable with it because you've been there before, and you'll be under a weight that is like disgustingly heavy. So you'll have to drop it. So it's just like stuff like that, just being very comfortable with that uncomfortable side,
I used to purposefully not put the bars on so that I just didn't have a way out. I was like, it was like one of my mental games. Like, I'm not going to put those safety bars there because by doing that, I've already told myself failure is an option. I'm always weird like that. Like if I even thought for a second when I was walking up, I might not get this, I would stop and go back and restart my song and re-chalk up, because I was like the possibility of failure might occur just came into my head, and I don't want that.
No.
So it takes a long time for people to learn stuff like that. I really like that GPP for TRT. That's super cool. I know like Dave Lee talks a lot about that. Him and I have talked about that kind of off camera, and I hope to dive in more with him. My problem always is maybe you don't have this problem as much as we do, like at Marek when I see them. They work with a health coach for a while, so maybe they don't have the problem. But my problem is when guys come to me, I will know that they need to get fit first to get the benefits from TRT, but I have limited time with them. And I also think that like they need TRT to start getting fit, because there's, I'm very sympathetic to the guy who feels like crap and they have insulin resistance and pre-diabetes, which is causing low testosterone. And if they only had higher testosterone, they could probably fix the pre-diabetes and the insulin resistance and everything. But now they have such low testosterone, they have no drive. They don't want to wake up. They don't want to do the work. So I'm always hoping that we can give TRT as the fuel that starts them to get fit again. Do you find that like, how do you work with those guys who, all they need to do is do the lifestyle stuff, but now that their testosterone's so low, they don't do the lifestyle stuff?
Yeah. A lot of guys who went through that came at me when I wrote an article on this for T Nation. They're like, I'm 25% and I started TRT and it saved my life. And I'm like, I understand. I think it was the way they titled it too, but I'm not saying only guys on 15% body fat should be on TRT. It was more that if you can trend in that direction. So using that to help them get jump started, like I'm all for that because you know what you're doing. Whereas sometimes if they're getting like, 250 milligrams because someone's like, you're a big dude, you need more T, they're not necessarily on board to fix the training stuff, then that's where problems can arise. And if I have somebody who is like 20% or above body fat and they go on TRT, great, because it'll just aid in the initial process, which is focused on getting them aerobically fit, which most guys, they hate. They think their muscles are going to fall off. They're going to lose their gains. But their mitochondrial health is so poor. When they sit and like, listen, they're just hyperventilating. Their resting heart rate is so high. They're burning through glycolysis all day long, not burning any fat. And so usually poor aerobic conditioning is a big part of that, especially for men, because they ignore that. So part of the GPP process is higher rep work, a lot of unilateral stuff, because that tricks them into cardio. Then I'll add low intensity, because the problem with the lower intensity stuff, it has to be higher volume. But I explained it to them this way. I'm like, listen, we're front loading your program with this. Give me like 8 to 12 weeks, 8 at the minimum. We'll get it out of the way. That way, as we get leaner, we are going to be able to just sprinkle in the HIIT stuff or the more intense stuff just to maintain that. But if we get it out of the way first, then we don't have to come back and visit this unless you want to do some sort of endurance event. And so that mindset kind of helps. And in addition to that, I go lower carb because we take the glucose load off the mitochondria, allow them to build more mitochondria so that they can effectively actually use the carbs and fats they're eating. Then they can recover better. Then they can sleep better. And then as they get leaner, we increase carbs. And the fun part is this is ass backwards from what they read. They think leaner I get, decrease carbs, increase cardio. And I'm like, surprise, we're doing the opposite. And so they're like, okay, but they trust the process. And it's so cool to watch when they comply and they do everything, that the transformation's amazing. Like I had one guy I have on my slides and in my talks. I started him at like 70 grams of carbs. We went through the higher rep process, the muscular endurance, gravitating into hypertrophy slowly. As he got leaner, we started adding carbs. He's now got 3 days where he's over 450 grams of carbs. And I had to keep adding carbs because he'd start to look flat and depleted and like small. And I'm like, dude, I'm feeding him up and he's loving it. And he's got veins and muscles. And it's just like he did everything I told him to. So once they can get through that part where they feel fluffy and they're eating more and maybe they hate higher rep work like a lot of people do, then there's light at the end of the tunnel. And now they're a lot healthier. Resting heart rate has come down. Blood pressure has come down. HRV has gone up. Their insulin resistance has flipped. So now they're in a better position for other things. And maybe that's more TRT, maybe it's less, but their health in general has improved so much that they feel a lot better. And that's really the goal. And now they have a platform to build muscle, because if you don't have a healthy body, you're not going to lose fat and you're not going to build muscle. So,
and I love that approach because I've always kind of thought that it's like I explained to most guys, like you're starting off with like a Prius, like 4-cylinder engine and wanting to feed it, jet fuel basically. And it doesn't need that. Like you have to build up a V10 Ferrari engine to fuel yourself to that level for you to really need it. And I love that you start off with the conditioning part of it too, because Adam knows I'm somebody that runs 35, 40 miles a week. And I think for most guys, like their zone 2 aerobic fitness is something that they totally negate. And while I love resistance training and think it has to be part of it, like their mitochondrial health to me trumps that as far as a longevity standpoint. And as you were saying, like just helps them to be much more efficient with everything that they're doing. I mean, even in the gym, like it allows your rest periods to go down so much. Like you can jump into a high intensity set, recover so much more efficiently, not be burning through all the glucose that you fueled yourself with that day. Like it just adds a totally different layer to their fitness and longevity.
So yes, I love that. And like the beginning, when someone first comes to coaching, that's when they're the most motivated. So they're going to do the harder shit because that's what they're told to do, whereas a year into it, they might not be so inclined to want to do 90 minutes of low intensity walking or whatever it is, but yeah.
I love that we're having this conversation because this is literally the basis of why we started this podcast, is because unfortunately, due to the nature of the algorithm, whatever one you're talking about, like if somebody from the outside were to look at you, Ali, it would be like, she's somebody who just pushes testosterone, because testosterone is what gets you clicks, unfortunately. If you go on and you start if you did that last nuanced conversation that you just gave us about what you do in men in the beginning, nobody would watch it. But if you say something like, boners and testosterone is going to get more clicks, and that's, totally understandable. But I love that we're kind of illustrating and elucidating what actually goes into your protocol and our protocol. When we give TRT, that's one part of a massive equation. There's 20 other variables, and it's 1/20th, the training, the sleep, the relationships, the spiritual health, the sunlight, so many different things go into it. And so, yes, it's an important component. For some reason, our society looks at it as being like, mystical and really special. So yes, we use the word testosterone a lot because it gets us clicks, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And I love that you were able to kind of illustrate that, because it's really cool. And I actually, personally, I would love if I could make the dudes do the hard work for at least like a month or two. I like that you said don't start TRT until you're 15 or lower. Our friend Clark Bartram just said something similar on Mark Bell's podcast, where he talked about just like people who go to get a gastric bypass have to prove that they can hit a certain weight without the surgery first,
Yeah.
that he thought all TRT clinics should have the same thing. Like you said, you need to hit 15% body fat before we can ever talk about TRT to prove to me that you have the willpower to do so. And I like that idea. I wish I could do that with people. Just be like, you know what? You got yourself in this, rut, and it sucks, and it's going to suck without TRT, but prove to me that you can handle TRT. Like Josh said, build the engine that can handle that fuel first, because otherwise we're not going to be doing you much good.
No, they're driving around with the service light on. They don't care.
Yeah.
I love those
service
analogies.
lights on, low tire pressure, everything.
Yeah. Like if you're going to start your road trip like that, it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
Barely can even start, but
yeah. And I mean, yeah, because literally it's, if you just take your normal Toyota, I don't know, Camry or whatever, and you just put in that premium fuel, just because it's the same fuel that the Ferrari does, it's not going to drive as fast as the Ferrari does, like all testosterone is fuel, but you still need the vehicle to do that. And you need to build the vehicle, and that takes a lot of work. And the testosterone, like that fuel doesn't turn that car into the Ferrari. It keeps it the same. You have to change things about the car to build it into the Ferrari.
100%. Dave Lee, whom I love, had his presentation for my Silverback Summit. He said, if you want to look like a fit, healthy, testosterone optimized man, you are committing to live like a fit, healthy, optimal testosterone man. And I thought that was powerful because, if we presented to them that you have to be 15% body fat or live a certain way in order to get testosterone, they'd be like, see you later. I'm going to go to, this clinic in the gas station, get whatever I want.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
outside of the body too, there's a lot of mental stuff that goes on. And this is what I'm looking forward to talking to Dave about, because him and I have talked about it. I didn't really give it much thought before until recently. One of our health coaches had a client who wrote him and said, at first testosterone was great, but then he went off and cheated on his wife because, he has this whole new flux. And what Dave told me is like, imagine, this is what he tells his guys, I guess, I'm hoping that he will say it on there, is he'll tell them, imagine going through puberty, but now having a, $300,000 salary and, all this stuff that you didn't have in puberty. Now you're going through puberty again, and you can, you have all those desires and urges and stuff. And that's really something I never thought about. I did a lot of really bad stuff too when I was, just getting into my hormones and ramping up, like a lot of stuff I regret now that I'm more mature. And that would be a whole nother area that now I need to focus on more with talking to people about. Do you guys ever have that conversation with your clients? What it will do to them mentally? And
I started to, because my doctor is Eric Serrano.
Uh-huh.
So you guys have met him, right? Love him.
Yeah.
Absolutely love him. And I spent a week shadowing him back in February. He will encourage the husband and wife to both come to the appointment. If it's a guy who's looking, at low T. And so he has this discussion and he asks the wife, how's your sex drive? Are you willing to become optimal as well? Because he is leery of putting a guy on TRT because of that.
Yeah.
Man, that's interesting. Because if the woman, like you hear this too all the time, guys are like, how do I get my wife to, be up to speed or have the same sex drive as me? Or, I feel like a teenager again and she has no interest. And so obviously that can cause problems. So he has that discussion with them. I'll sometimes bring that up, but with Marek, I'm like, your woman can get handled
True.
with Marek. Because there's not a lot of female providers that specialize in testosterone, or I'm sorry, in hormone optimization. But I've, a network of guys, and now we have Marek who can do the women, because it is important that both are in balance, obviously. But I think the initial brain health feelings that guys have is important for them to realize too, because they'll always ask, well, what am I going to feel? And I'm like, well, I'm not a man, but what my guys tell me is they automatically have more clarity and like more ability to think things through. And you guys can probably speak on this too, but that's the one thing that they initially realize is like their mental ability to handle things as well as sleep and recovery. but usually it's the mental benefits that they have initially. It's not going to be the physical, you know, I tell them this, but a lot of guys think like, wow, that brain fog just kind of lifted, and it was more the neurological stuff.
It's hard for me to give an honest answer on that because now it's been so long since I've been doing stuff that I can't remember really. And I feel like I'm usually telling the opposite, like, you know, it's not that profound, but I need to reel myself back in and realize, well, now it's just my normal. It kind of has been for my entire adult life, because at 23 or whenever I started, that's basically still a child, you know? So I basically had, this is like extremely high levels or optimal levels of testosterone my entire adult life. So I can't really tell, but certainly, you know, I think what guys will say is that they do have better stress resilience, so they can go into stressful situations a little bit better. But I think that it's important, and I like that Dave talks about it, and why I'm going to start talking about it, that you do have like not only the 15% body fat and the physical stuff done, but you got your mind dialed in too, because, you know, are you ready to, you know, have that fuel running through your brain too? Or, you know, are you just going to go spend your life savings? Are you going to do stupid shit because you've been running on this like suboptimal brain for so long? And now that you feel like you have the power, like, are you going to go start cheating and being unloyal and spending too much money? And, you know, so it's interesting. There's so many things that go into it that guys need to think about. And I love that people like yourself and people like Marek and Serrano, that we're all talking about, not just doing the TRT and leaving it be. Because there's, unfortunately, like you said, if you go to Florida and you go get a script of whatever, those are literally just jabbing you and sending you on your way to go wreak havoc on the world. And, you know, like if you're going to get into this realm, if you want to optimize your hormones, do it with somebody like Ali, who is going to be able to coach you through it all and work with you and deal with the nuances, because there's a lot more to just the one injection.
100%. That's why I also created the Silverback Summit, which is a men's health event for bringing attention to these things, so that guys could learn this is like the truth and this is how you go about this. And these are all the other little things that we talked about today that people don't talk about when you see all these advertisements for TRT. You just see like, oh, my life is going to change for the better and nothing wrong is going to happen. And, you know, they get sent out the door with the cookie cutter protocol of like 4 different things that they don't really need. And, you know, say la vie.
Exactly. Well, I think that was a good conversation. I hope people learned from it. Where can people reach you, Ali?
Instagram's primarily where I spend most of my time. So at the Ali Gilbert, ALI.
Oh no.
Right at the end.
All right, guys. Ali is down in Florida, as she said, and her power just went out and her internet went out. So let's see. What's her handle, Josh?
Her handle is the Ali Gilbert. So just the ALI and then Gilbert, all one word. So you can find her on Instagram there, if that'll show. That? There we go. Yep.
Nice.
Even verified with the blue check mark. But yeah, lots of good content on her end, going a little bit more in depth about what we talked about today. Yeah,
and she does what she alluded to, that Silverback Summit, which she just did this past weekend, and I believe it was free, so guys could log in and talk to or listen to, you know, really great figures in the space like herself and Dave Lee. There was a ton of other people talking though, and it was all free content. And I think she also does an in-person one. I'll talk to her and put it all in the description, but I think she's going to be doing an in-person one in Texas, I believe. And hopefully by the time that I'm out there, so hopefully Josh and I can go and be there in person and meet some of you guys. But I would definitely recommend that. I know for her next one, I think I'm going to be doing a presentation for her next online one. So that's a great resource. So go to her Instagram, check out her Silverback stuff, and we'll see if she wants to add anything else in, and we'll put it in the bottom. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Any last words, Josh?
No, sir. Just chugging along here. Hope you guys have a good week. Enjoyed this. Adam's coming to Dallas in May in a couple weeks to hopefully look for a new home possibly here. So yeah, we're all excited about that. Maybe get a studio for you guys here soon in Dallas and have a HQ to podcast out of going forward. So you'll get rid of my shitty background here.
And I need to start getting bigger. So when I sit next to Josh in person, I don't look so small. But no, I think this is a really good conversation. You know, like we talked about in there, I think that companies, even ours included, we focus so much on just testosterone. And that's such a, again, it's just because it hits on the algorithm, it's because you guys click on it, but don't be fooled into thinking that it's only testosterone and it's the end all be all, and that if you do testosterone, it will magically fix all your problems, because it won't. And so I think that was the underlying, or overarching theme of this. So you guys who listen to us know that we harp on that all the time. We've been running for a while now, much over an hour. So we'll let you guys go, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
See you soon.
Cool. That was fun.
That actually was a really good one, man. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.